Hello, I'm Andrew Pearce. This is The Daily Show from the Daily Mail newsroom. Coming up, she's been in EastEnders for 35 years and she's 93, but June Brown, aka Dot Cotton, she's finally calling it a day. The National Trust are banning their annual Easter egg hunts with Cadbury's because they say sugar isn't good for kids. A new report says a lot of women lose interest in sex, sometimes up to a third of them. But we're talking to some women who like it every day, sometimes 3 times a day. We're talking about banning wet wood. If you've got a wood-burning stove, you might have to get rid of it. The government want to get rid of the wood because it's bad for the environment. But first, Tony Blair warns Labour not to become involved in too much talk about trans rights. Well, he's the most successful Labour leader in history. He won 3 consecutive general elections and he's made a major speech to mark the 120th anniversary of the Labour Party. And he says Labour must not get into a culture war over trans rights. He's also refusing to sign a 12-point plan of rights for trans people. He says fixating on fringe issues risks putting a whole load of people off of Labour at a very time when it needs to rebuild its support base after December's latest general election humiliation. He warned whoever replaces Jeremy Corbyn not to turn the party simply into a pressure group and says don't sign the 12-point pledge card issued by the Labour campaign for for trans rights. Joining me now is Lord Adonis, former Cabinet Minister under Gordon Brown. Lord Adonis, is your mate Tony Blair right about this?
Well, his basic point is that leaders of the opposition, indeed prime ministers, shouldn't sign pledge sheets at all. It's not a question of trans rights. It's any equivalent statement of that kind, because you always make it appear that you're limiting your own views to those which people are seeking to impose on you from outside. Now, I think that's a very good principle of action. I noticed that Keir Starmer's doing it too, the Labour leadership candidate, and I think it should just be a general principle not to sign pledge cards and pledges put before you which limit your freedom of action.
Can't you remember the 97 general election? One of the most successful things Labour did, they had a pledge card.
Yeah, but that was Labour's own policies.
Right.
Having decided
So
what the policies were going to be.
Right.
Then, of course, there was a pledge card. But this is propositions being put. That's not to say that this isn't the right thing to do ultimately in terms of policy, but it's not the right thing for a leader of a major political party to be committing themselves to one set of issues, because of course it then begs the question: what about the next set of issues? And when that's put in front of you, you're going to sign that, and it's not a good direction to go in, I think.
But the pledge card on the trans rights has already been signed by Lisa Nandy and Rebecca Long Bailey, the 2 women left in the leadership contest, and that says you must expel from the Labour Party people who express bigoted transphobic views. But will it be bigoted and transphobic to say, Lord Adonis, a man who transitions into a woman is still a man?
Well, this is exactly the reason why I don't think it's a good idea to be signing these pledges at the moment. I think Tony Blair's completely right. Somebody who wants to be Prime Minister and leader of the opposition shouldn't be putting themselves in that position at the moment.
Richard Burgon, of course, the deputy leader candidate, much loved by the Corbynistas, he's refusing to sign the Jewish pledges from the Board of Deputies. Is he right? Is that right too?
Well, as I say, if I was the leader of the opposition or Prime Minister, which is what most of them do, I wouldn't be signing pledges, full stop. Obviously, I'm strongly identified with Jewish rights, but that's different from signing pledges.
But the Board of Deputies, and the relationship between the Labour Party has been fraught, Lord Adonis, with the ongoing inquiry by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission into apparent anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Surely this is one series of pledges that Labour should embrace.
Well, actually, the issue there is what Labour's actually done in the face of anti-Semitic behaviour. That's been the issue, and whether it's been robust enough in dealing with anti-Semites inside the party. And the Equalities and Human Rights Commission is looking at that quite rightly, because there are big concerns about it. And that's the way I think to proceed on this, is to see that the party actually expels anti-Semites. That needs to be done.
OK, and finally, Lord Tony Blair is very successful former Prime Minister. He won 3 general elections, unprecedented for Labour in the 20th century. Why has he become so unpopular and unloved by Labour Party members?
I don't think he is, actually. In my experience, most ordinary Labour Party members pay tribute to him, and a lot of them strongly support him. But it's the Corbynite left, of course, to find themselves against him because of the Iraq War. And And it wasn't just the Iraq War either. They thought that he'd moved too far to the right on a whole set of other issues too. My own view is it was the best Labour government that we've ever had, and until Labour starts celebrating its own successes, it's going to be very hard to persuade the country there should be another Labour government. So I thought what Tony Blair said yesterday about needing to move back towards the centre, celebrate success, celebrate the fact that we did have 13 years of a really excellent Labour government is exactly the right direction to go.
Just very briefly, in those 120 years of the Labour Party history, Labour has only been in power 30 of those 120 years. It's a pretty salutary fact, isn't it?
It's terrible. It's a terrible statement of Labour's consistent unelectability over the decades, and having leaders like Jeremy Corbyn, who have been very factional leaders from the far left, I think has been a huge problem. You've also got to have leaders who can be trusted on national defence, and people didn't think that a Labour leader who'd been talking to the IRA was a great way of demonstrating our credentials on defence either. So we've got to move back towards sensible politics again, and I'm hoping that we can do that over the next year or two.
All right, that's Lord Adonis, who was Cabinet Minister, who was Transport Secretary under Tony Blair. He's the man who's created HS2. You might want to take that up with him. Now, remember to tell your Alexa speaker to play Daily Mail News, and you'll get your latest newsroom live from Mail Plus. And at 5, the latest Daily Show. Jonah wood burner, stove, open fire, because you may not be able to buy coal or wet wood to burn in them under a ban being rolled out from next year. Sales of the two most polluting fuels will be phased out in England to help cut air pollution, according to the government. Bags of logs sold in do-it-yourself stores, garden centres and petrol stations, they often contain wet wood, which produces more pollution and smoke than others. The public now say, according to the government, should move to cleaner alternatives. Peter Smith is Policy Director at National Energy Action. Peter, this is going to disappoint a lot of people, and it's also going to be very expensive for them if they're going to have to replace their stoves.
Well, I think it's broadly welcome, obviously, from an air quality and carbon perspective, but you're absolutely right. It will require some fairly fundamental changes in the way that people heat their homes. From our perspective, we're a charity that makes sure we represent the interests of lower income consumers who often or who will very much struggle to afford to replace their heating systems. At the moment, there's very little support for households, particularly poorer households, to do that. So this does create a real challenge for them.
And I'm just looking at the figures. An estimated 2.5 million homes in the UK have hearths with open fires or wood-burning stoves. Are they all going to have to be effectively closed down? And I also wonder this, Peter, how will this be enforced by the government?
Well, over the long term, so if you look at the commitments that the government made to be net zero by 2050, I think in the longer term, certainly those households will have to consider switching to much cleaner alternatives. In the short term, however, this is about the phasing out of the sale of house coal and wet logs, and so there is a responsibility on the providers of those wet logs to make sure that they're dry and that people can buy their product.
How quickly, when this change comes into effect, will we notice an improvement in our air quality? I mean, how badly polluted are we because of these fires?
Well, there are figures out there to suggest that over 40,000 premature deaths are directly correlated with bad air quality. So it is a very stark and real issue. I think the ban is due to kick in February 2021. For some air quality campaigners, that isn't soon enough. I think our key message is that it's absolutely vital that if the government are going to do this, that they provide adequate support for those on the lowest incomes who will struggle to afford to replace their heating appliances.
All right, that's Peter Smith. He's Policy Director at National Energy Action. Now, if you enjoy The Daily Show, we hope you do, please subscribe to us, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify, and get in touch by emailing me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk or follow us at mailplus. So children's health campaigners are delighted that the National Trust and Cadbury are ending their joint Easter egg hunts. They've gone on forever. The move spells an end to the family-friendly trails for the Cadbury's chocolate because it's all to do with chocolate being bad for our health. The confectionery giant used unsustainable palm oil in its products. That's Cadbury's. And in 2017, they were criticised by Theresa May and the Archbishop of Canterbury for appearing to drop the word Easter from the egg hunts. Joining me now, of course, is Tam Fry, who's chairman of the National Obesity Forum. Tam, what's one Easter egg?
One Easter egg is not a great problem. The problem with Easter eggs is that they're on sale from Christmas and they're no longer treats, they are everyday snacks.
But this is a great adventure for kids. It involves exercise too, which is something the National Obesity Forum should applaud because they have to go and find the Easter egg.
That's absolutely true. I would rather, however, and I think that the Children's Food Campaign have said you can go off and explore and find things which do not include anything to do with overload of sugar, which these are. So you can hide things in forests and fields and buildings, whatever, and you can give the children some clues, if you will, and off they go. And when they get to the promised land, they find it's a treat, but it should not be a sweet treat or a food. It can be many, many things left up to the devices of the organizers. But certainly to concentrate on chocolate, I think is basically a bad idea. I think it's particularly bad because of the problems of decaying teeth. We have children now who are eating twice as much sugar as they should. Teenagers are going through 3 times as much sugar as they should, and therefore anything which can right that particular wrong gets my vote.
Can I ask you just finally, Tam Fry, how much sugar is in an average Easter egg?
Quite well. The average Easter egg depends on the size. There's some very, very large ones,
right,
which are 24 teaspoonfuls of sugar.
Gosh. Or
there are some very small ones, which will be maybe 2. But that's the real problem, is that you've got to know the size. Then you've got to have a good idea of how much sugar is in there. And our basic feeling would be that you shouldn't be using any anyway. You could be using something which is much more beneficial to the child, like a storybook or something of that nature. It should not be anything which is likely to be injurious to their health.
Do you give your children or grandchildren an Easter egg?
I certainly don't give my grandchildren Easter eggs, and my children are far too old now to be eating chocolates. I think my grandchild has gone off to see what's that wonderful movie which has just won the award in Parasites.
Oh, Parasites. Oh, yeah, very good. Have you seen the film?
I haven't seen it. My wife has seen it. She says it's terrific, and I've got to go. So I guess she'll take me by the ear between now and Easter and sit me down, and I'll probably enjoy it.
And no eating any chocolates in the cinema, Tam?
Absolutely not. I read the furore about Imelda Staunton.
Quite right, too. Absolutely. We've lost him. That was Tam Fry. We were going to get into a whole conversation about chocolates in the cinema. Drives me nuts. And people eating, Chris. Now, coming up, it's the end of an era for EastEnders. And has the Daily Mail dispelled the myth of the midlife sex crisis? All of that and more. I have to find out what's on TV. It's Claudia Connell.
OK, thanks, Andrew. Well, I don't talk about soaps generally, but EastEnders is celebrating its 35th anniversary. The whole week has focused on a boat party on the Thames where one character dies. So tonight on BBC One, you'll find out who it is. Soaps go on and off the boil, but EastEnders is really back on form at the moment, particularly Kelly Bright, who plays Linda Carter, a character who is battling alcoholism, and she has been absolutely outstanding. Later on BBC One, there's a one-off comedy called Bumps. It's a pilot episode, so it's the BBC just testing it out to see if it merits a series.
I'm not 25 anymore, but I've got more energy than most people half my age. Everyone says how fit I am. Michelle at work, she's 32, right? And I'm twice as fast as her up the stairs. To be fair, she does have MS, but I think she plays it up.
Amanda Redmond stars as Anita, a divorced mum of grown-up kids who decides that she wants to have a baby in her 60s. And at the same time, her 30-something daughter discovers that she's pregnant. I mean, I've got to say, it's not the most sophisticated comedy that I've ever seen, and I'd be very surprised if it does end up getting a whole series. You've probably seen David Schwimmer on every chat show going, promoting Intelligence. It's his newest comedy that starts on Sky One tonight.
I think we can learn a lot from each other. especially from me.
Do you have an update on China?
Did some pretty breathtaking work on that.
This is just taken from Wikipedia.
Right, you have that here?
David Schwimmer is best known as playing Ross in Friends, but he's actually a really gifted comic actor, and he brings that talent to this show. It's set in GCHQ. He plays Jerry, a very arrogant, obnoxious security agent from the US, sent to work with the uptight Brits. He's a big one for team-building exercises, but his whole kind of sort of Yankee personality doesn't really sort of gel with the Brits, and it's a lot funnier than you'd expect.
Thanks, Claudia. Time for our regular city update now with our very own Ruth Sunderland, business editor at the Daily Mail. Now, is the next 007 movie going to be in a Barclays branch? What's that about? Might be more interesting than if it's got Daniel Craig in it.
It might be. So I'm looking around here and wondering, is Big Brother watching us at the moment, do you think?
Yes.
So what's happened
in our egg cup?
In our
egg
studio,
box.
so our egg box studio. So there's lots of spyware there. So in my computer, there might be a little spy saying Ruth Sunderland is away from her desk.
Yeah.
Warning, warning. So what's happened is Barclays has actually this morning scrapped its spying enterprise that it was trying out. So what it was doing is it installed spying software in employees' computers as a trial in its investment bank to see whether they're working hard enough. Well, it said, to stop people overworking. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So to check on people's productivity. And if you weren't in the zone long enough, by which it meant at your desk typing, working hard, which calls in the zone, the computer would reprimand you and say, to spend more time in the zone, Andrew. I'm not sure you've been in the zone enough.
Don't say too much about this. It might give the Daily Mail ideas.
Well, I'm sure they've already had ideas. But, so what I object to about this, apart from the fact I think Barclays, it's good that they've abandoned this idea because it was obviously stupid and designed to promote stress and distrust and so on. And also...
Did the staff know?
Well, they did know because they were being told off by the machine. I mean, imagine, to be honest, I quite like to tell off my own stuff. I don't want to delegate that to a machine. It's the best fun I have all day is telling people off. But the serious point is, shouldn't managers manage? Management shouldn't be delegated to spyware in a computer. Management should be something that people do in a kind of sensitive, humane way, hopefully, with a bit of tact, and that you don't kind of tell somebody. I mean, this was even monitoring people going to the loo,
Why do you think they've dropped it?
Well, because I think it got leaked to the press.
Yeah.
Our paper and others picked up on this, and it's not great publicity. I also think, maybe let's give them a bit of credit. Perhaps the feedback that they got from their staff, they listened to and realised it was doing more harm than good. Because if you think you're being watched and spied on, it doesn't exactly promote love and goodwill.
Certainly not.
Towards your employer, does it?
I think we better check our own computers here,
Well, I'll be off to do that right now.
Would you? Let me know. That's Ruth Sunderland. That's Ruth Sunderland. Sports editor Mark Paget's here with the latest. Eddie Jones, outrage. I heard that on the radio.
That's right, mate.
And on its back page of the Mail today.
Absolutely. He just can't help himself, can he? A couple of weeks ago, he was starting talking about brutality and violence, and that riled the French. And then yesterday, he managed to get himself in the middle of this race gaffe. So this is a clip which has caused all the controversy.
For you personally, you've talked before about your meditation. Are you still doing that, and how does it help you?
I don't think I've ever spoken about meditation. You must be thinking about someone else. Maybe another half Asian person.
I don't think so.
Maybe we all look the same.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not great. And
I mean, casual racism.
Yeah, exactly. And people say, it's just Eddie being Eddie. But it's sort of okay when you're winning and doing okay. But things aren't going too great at the moment for England. And so suddenly this game against Ireland on Sunday is massive. And he's also been at it again today, not racism, but he's picked a bizarre team today. And Clive Woodward, our own rugby expert, has said it's baffling, zero logic, etc. So he's just piled the pressure on himself. They'll either win this Six Nations or he will go at the end of the Six Nations.
Do you still think we're going to win it tomorrow?
Clive says Ireland by 1 point, but
really?
But he knows more about it than me, obviously. But I'll go for England just. Still.
All right. Now, Jose's been on the phone.
Yes, that's a bizarre story as well. Peter Crouch, our columnist, again. Tottenham have got a bit of an injury crisis, no striker up front, and so Crouchy sort of joked earlier this week, I know I'm 38, 39, retired, etc., but I used to play for Spurs, still got my boots. Lo and behold, he gets a FaceTime at home. He thinks it's Abby Clancy calling him from the Brits, but no, it's Jose on the phone and sort of joshing with him. You're always welcome here, Peter. You know, I love you to bits, etc., etc. And so he sort of thought, I might be back, might be playing for Spurs again. But I think Jose still put him in his place and said, thanks, Peter, but yeah, I was only joshing.
And we don't want to lose him as a columnist.
No, absolutely not. We need a full-time Daily Mail sports columnist.
Exactly. And finally, the big match, the big boxing match.
Yeah, we spoke about it all week.
We have.
And our man Jeff Powell says, my heart says Tyson Fury, but my head says Deontay Wilder. So put some money on Deontay in the 9th round, says Jeff.
All right,
So,
that's Mark Paget. Now, do get in touch. You email me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk. You follow us at mailplus. Now, a new report says a third of women suffer a loss of libido. And there are a number of midlife women, however, who enjoy soaring. Their word, not mine, soaring sexual desire. This is according to researchers at Glasgow University who asked 12,000 women and men if they'd noticed a lack of interest in sex for at least 3 months during the past year. A third of them said they had. The answer that was most common amongst those who were in midlife and older. But the Mail has discovered women who liked sex every day, some even like it 3 times a day. Joining me now is Carol El Howery, I hope I pronounced that right, who's Director of Planning for an education company, and she told the Mail today that she has sex every day. Carol, don't you get worn out?
Yeah, sometimes I get worn out, I confess. Yeah, my body's not quite up to the same as my libido, to be honest with you.
But what about your husband? Now you're 54, he's 49. He's obviously pretty athletic, because if he's more than happy to hit the sack with you every day.
Oh, I think this is what quite surprises some people is that I'm more keen, shall we say, than he is, usually because he's too tired or too stressed or something. But if I could every day, I would. Yes, definitely. Sometimes we don't get the opportunity, but
and of course, this is your second marriage. The first one ended a few years ago, and at the end of that marriage, Karen, according to the Mail today, the sex had pretty much dried up. So, do you think this is you've been with your new guy 5-6 years now? It can't just be the first flush of love because you've been together quite a while.
Oh no, that's one of the things that's been a revelation for me in this marriage. Actually, is that it's not diminished at all, and I think it's the right person. He's the right person for me, certainly physically and sexually, and because of that, but I still find him very attractive.
Yeah.
So
and he likes you. He likes your Celtic red hair.
Oh, yes, so he says. Yes. Yeah.
And he's Egyptian. He's Egyptian, is he?
Egyptian, yes.
So do you look at him and sort of think a touch of Omar Sharif here?
Yes, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Because he was incredibly dashing and handsome and charming. And what of and you live in Cairo now, I think, Carol, do you?
Yes, I live in Cairo. Yes.
And how's that?
It's very hot. Yes, it's hot. That's well, not at the moment, but it's hot. Yes, that's my friend.
But that's what I was thinking. Doesn't that make it a bit too hot for sex sometimes?
Oh yes, but we have air conditioning. Don't worry, there are always these problems.
Right, right. And if I can just push you a bit more on this sex stuff, would you ever do it 3 times a day, like some of the women in the Mail today?
Yes, I would, but I might have to be creative due to, shall we say, painful body parts.
Right, I see. How would you be creative? Do you read a book?
Yes, read a book, yeah. I would, in terms of just what we do differently, shall we say.
I see. Now, have you had sex today?
No, I haven't.
Right. Are you expecting to later?
Yes, I am.
Good. And does he know it? Is he ready? Is he ready and waiting?
Let's just say he expects it because he always does. But so I haven't said explicitly, but I'm sure he's expecting it. Yeah.
Who has the headache most often, you or him?
Oh, him, definitely.
Oh, these men, what are they made of?
Yeah, he's just not up to the job. Yeah.
So, Carol, just finally, your advice to women who may be in a marriage where the sex has gone off a bit, what would be your advice to them? If
there's always ways around these things, I think, and that if they if, for example, at my age, there are certain physical barriers sometimes, and if that's the case, then go to the doctor, because that's what I did, and it massively helped. But there are ways to rekindle it and keep your sex life going, definitely. Just be a bit creative.
Well, you've certainly rekindled. That's Carol El Hawari. We'll let her go. She's Director of Planning for an education company, and she's going off now to have sex with her husband. EastEnders legend June Brown. She plays Dot Cotton. She's left. We're all going to be forlorn, aren't we? With her headscarf and a fag in her hand, Dot's been a fixture in Walford since 1985, the year the show began. She's 93. She told a podcast she's left for good. Joining me now is Eleanor Sharples, our own TV and radio reporter. How big a loss will she be?
She's been a stalwart fixture in Walford for a very long time, so she's not had many big storylines recently over the last few months, years, I guess. But, you know, it'll be like Ken Barlow leaving Corrie, I guess, for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, her son, Nasty Nick, I can remember in the 80s, they were a huge part of the story, weren't they?
Yeah,
now, he was killed off a few years ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I'd probably say that was maybe one of her last biggest storylines. She went out last month. She said that she was going off to Ireland, and now she's all of a sudden said
She's not coming back.
Yeah.
Is it because she just got fed up, too old, or is she bored with the fact the parts have dried up a bit?
Yeah,
the roles have dried up.
Yeah, I think that's what she said. But what does seem interesting about it is that an insider has said that people at EastEnders are actually baffled with her disappearance, and that all her stuff still remains in her dressing room at where EastEnders is filmed. So they really don't seem to have had a clue that she was going.
Maybe this is all part of. Maybe she's going to come back.
She could. I mean, there's people joking.
They'd
on
take
Twitter.
her back, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and they've said the door is still very much open for her. So I don't think it's, see you later, you've gone. But she right now has decided that that's what she's done.
I guess she and Ian, is it the guy who plays Ian Beale?
Yeah.
They must be about the only originals left now.
Yeah, quite possibly. Coronation Street seem to have more of a cast who have been there a bit longer, and I guess they have been there longer. But whereas EastEnders have a bit more of seems to be a higher turnover.
Yeah. And tell me, Eleanor, is EastEnders more popular than Coronation Street these days in the ratings, or do they take it in turns?
I'd say take it in turns quite a bit. I think Emmerdale's the one that's really stepped up. They've won the Soap Awards quite a lot recently, and as well at the NTA. So I'd say that one seems to be
right.
But I just think Coronation Street's got more of a happy feel, a bit funnier, whereas EastEnders is always a bit more.
Oh, it's always so grim and depressing.
Yeah, it is.
Christmas, there'd be people jumping off car parks and killing themselves and trains crashing. I mean, Coronation Street, we loved Bette Lynch in a leopard skin dress, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I think
her.
as well, what's quite prominent is that she's left on the 35th anniversary. That's when it's kind of been announced. So the show tonight is celebrating its big anniversary, and
so that's rather overshadowed
it.
She's done it because she's an old trooper. She just wanted to get the headlines, didn't she?
And she's got them.
She's certainly got them. That's Eleanor Sharples, TV and radio reporter. That's all we've got time for today. For the latest from the Daily Mail newsroom, come back every day for briefings at 7 a.m, 12 noon, and of course 5 p.m, where you can listen to me all over again. That's all from me, Andrew Pearce from The Daily Show. I'll be back next week. Have yourselves a great evening and good night.